Hi friends, this video is a bit different from my earlier videos. Earlier I used to primarily use stock market, but I personally felt this video is important and important because for last 1 year practically, right, there was one or the other practical issues, right, which everybody has faced. And now what's happening is one of the stars, which was Saturn, which turned on a positive sign for last practically 6 months. Now another planet, which are they're both macro planets. Okay, so other planets which is going positive from sixth, seventh, I'll say sixth or eighth, depending on the location you are in, is Jupiter, which is getting positive, right? So what I would like to do is I would like to divide that between three parts. Okay, the first part is just a brief about how Jupiter behaves. Second part is how Jupiter behaves in Aquarius, right, where it is transiting now. And third, what will be the broad impact on the different lagnas, right? Lagnas, I'm saying because I personally feel the transits gives much better results, or I'll say 80-90% of the results, which is when we count it from the lagna rather than counting it from the moon sign. So now Jupiter, personally speaking, Jupiter, I have a very different interpretation of Jupiter. Jupiter for me is a planet which gives you vision. That is the first thing which comes to my mind because Jupiter, as such, inherently is a planet which depicts or which shows your inherent intelligence, right? So Jupiterian people probably will be in a much better position to understand different spheres because their logical reasoning and logical conclusions are very, very strong, right? They'll be very good in connecting the abstract things, right? So Jupiter is the planet of intelligence per se, right? And obviously, other side, there's certain other planets like Mercury is the planet of business intelligence. Okay, business intelligence is the decisions where you are concerned with buy and sell decisions. Okay, at what price you need to buy and what price you need to sell. That is something which is given by Mercury. Okay, so at the moment I'm talking more in terms of the philosophical intelligence, right, which is broader, like a teacher or professor or advisor, right? The people who have stock Jupiter, you'll find a lot of them into these professions as well, right? Now, Jupiter had been into Capricorn for almost like a year. I'll say almost a year because in between it went retrograde, again went back, right? But ultimately, some part of the results again will be Capricorn, right? So Jupiter, what is the Capricorn? Capricorn is family or Rashi, which is for execution. It is not a thought process, okay? Because Jupiter is known for thought process, right? So Jupiter will be very comfortable if there's anything which is concerning more. Concerning which is strategy, advice, those kind of things, right? But if you tell Jupiter to go and execute, he'll never be comfortable because that is not his basic nature. So assume, primarily you assume a teacher, okay? So teacher is very good in giving advice, but if you go and tell teacher to execute, he'll be very uncomfortable. But there will be certain times when he has to execute, right? Because of the extraneous circumstances, right? But in terms of comfort, he'll not be very, very comfortable, right? So that is the position from which Jupiter is moving from Capricorn to Aquarius. Now, Aquarius being the 11th house of the horoscope, right? And Aquarius normally is a house which is associated with wider social circle, wider reputation, inflow of income, right? Inflow of also a bit of knowledge as well. All right. I'll give you the reason why because this ninth house actually is the 11th house from the 11th house, right? So technically, it does represent a bit of knowledge as well, right? It does represent quite a bit of because being in 11th house, right? It does impact your seventh house, which is the house of marriage. It does impact your third house, which is again is the house of communication. Okay. So whenever Jupiter comes into Aquarius, for me, a lot of times I'll say Cancer is one sign which is the positive sign for Jupiter. But the other positive sign for Jupiter is Aquarius because being in Aquarius, it aspects all the important houses: the house number third, the house number fifth, the house number technically seventh. There are direct aspects, 11th from the house number 9, which again is depicting knowledge, right? So that is what the 11th house is, the very, very important position for Jupiter, right? And it is in the it is in the Rashi of Saturn. Saturn is obviously a well thought through strategy, right? So when Jupiter is placed there, then the strategy is very, very strongly backed by the execution capabilities. Because once the Jupiter moves from Capricorn, he has learned. It was difficult time for Jupiter, but he has still learned the basic nuances of the business, which is the execution, right? So once it gets into Aquarius, so the strategy is built upon the execution experiences which you normally have during the last one. Okay. So the strategy, when it is based upon execution, obviously is much better as compared to a theoretical or a philosophical strategy. So I personally feel once Jupiter moves from Capricorn to Aquarius, I'll not say may not be, which may be a wrong word to be honest, because I don't think any planet is uch or niche, because the interpretation is something which is more important, right? Because uch Jupiter normally will give you a lot of knowledge, a lot of sattvic nature, principled person, those kind of things, right? But the niche planet, Jupiter, can give you money, okay? Hard cash, because the interpretation as per the history and as per the current context is changed, right? Now, there are certain circumstances where Jupiter normally gives a lot of money as well, right? When does that come in? Because normally you segregate planets between money-giving planets and the planets which are knowledge-based planets, right? So I'll say Venus, Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Moon are primarily planets which are concerned with money. And the planets which are concerned with knowledge, advice, which is 50% of, I'll say, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, because Mars is a soldier, so it always gives you winning, right? Winning in the sense that winning battles, right? So once you win battles, what do you get? You get actually land, right? So Mars is basically land. Mars is not hard cash. Okay. So whenever it is Mars, so it gives you construction, right? It gives you lands. And which are the conditions in which Jupiter actually gives money? Now, whenever Jupiter is associated with the other set of planets, which is Venus, Mercury, Moon, Sun, right? These are the 4, 5 planets which are basically money-giving planets, right? So whenever Jupiter is influenced by them or is in their Rashi, right? That is the time Jupiter's nature actually gets changed, a bit changed to the, because Jupiter acts as a catalyst. So based upon Jupiter's knowledge, these planets make money. Okay. Now, when does that happen? That happens in case of horoscopes which are related to large industrialists. Because large industrialists makes money through business. However, the nature of their business is more in terms of vision. It is not in terms of execution. So they're not traders. They're basically the ones who actually create a long-term business plan and then they execute, right? So that is the normal inferences of Jupiter. That is the time when Jupiter actually starts giving you money or gives you access to that money, right? In terms of being a catalyst, it gives you start giving you money in that direction. Okay. So now when this transition is going to happen, this transition is going to start from 6th of April, will continue till June, right? And then again for 4 months, Jupiter is getting into retrogradation. And again, it will continue for around 7 to 8 months, right? So practically, Jupiter will stay in Aquarius for around 11, 12 months, 12 months practically. In between, there'll be like 3, 4 months period when it is going to be into retrograde motion, right? So, which are the specific ascendants where Jupiter will give a good kind of growth, a good positivity technically? Basic two things. One, Jupiter is going to be positive primarily for practically everybody. Okay. Practically everybody, why I'm saying, because till now for last 1 year, Jupiter was in an uncomfortable position, which was more towards execution, right? And now it gets into a thought process. So a lot of people who were a bit irritated, right? Irritated because they have to focus more on the survival, right? Because things were not even looking good on the other sides, right? So they are the one who will get into a bit of comfortable situation, right? They'll be able to think through things, right? So they'll be able to focus more on their businesses with respect to the strategies, a bit longer term strategies, right? Now there are certain lagnas who will be having very positive signs, right? And there'll be certain lagnas where it will be positive, but it will not be substantially positive, right? One another thing which is very, very important is the people who are running the dashas or antardashas or even the pratyantar dashas of Jupiter, right? For them, obviously, Jupiter is the planet who's ruling their chart at that particular point of time. So obviously, things will be much impactful. I'll say the quantum is going to be high. Okay, I'm not talking about the quality, right? Now, how do you define the quality? The quality will be defined based upon the basic horoscope of a person, right? So, say if the horoscope, the Jupiter position is very good, right? And he's running Jupiter Mahadasha, this transition is going to be phenomenally well, right? But if the basic horoscope, Jupiter position is not very great, right? However, he's running the Jupiter Dasha, and this thing happens. So obviously, the negative results will be nullified to an extent. Okay, that is the broad parameters. So now let's talk about the lagnas. Normal basic principles, I'll say, normally in odd numbers, Jupiter performs odd lagnas, Jupiter performs well, except one, which is Gemini, right? Gemini also it performs well, except it does create some issues, which is with respect to because Gemini is primarily a highly sexual kind of sign, right? So that is where it creates problems. It will create problems in terms of marriage and alliances and those kind of things, right? But broadly, it will be okay. Okay. So now let's come to the first lagna, which is Aries, right? In Aries, Jupiter will be placed in 11th house, one of the best placements, to be honest, right? It is going to be positive with respect to social circles, with respect to reputation enhancement, with respect to the inflow of money. People who are stuck, who are looking for job change, or they were looking at opportunities in the business. This is the time when things will start rolling into the right position. Okay. Now, if we so in terms of quantum, I'll say at least 9/10 kind of number, right? It's very strong, very positive for them, right? Now let's come to the second side, and there's a high, very very high possibility for Aries Lagna people. Possibility the people who are appearing for higher education is going to be positive for them, right? Even in terms of foreign placement, is going to be positive because for Aries Lagna, Jupiter rules the house number 9 and house number 12. So people might get opportunities into multinational companies, right? Some people might get opportunity to get displaced from India, from their native place, right? That's a possibility. Now, if we come to the second, which is Taurus, right? For Taurus, Jupiter is going to be placed in the 10th house, right? So it is more in terms of, it's not going to be, I'll not say it is going to be great for, because for Taurus, Jupiter is not very, very good planet, right? It does create a bit of hindrances normally, right? And when it is Jupiter as such in the 10th house is not very good. Jupiter in 10th house is not very good because 10th house is again the house of execution, technically, right? So it is going to be placed in 10th house. However, the situation which was there in the previous year still is going to be positive. High possibility you may be a bit irritated, but obviously they're going to be enhancement in terms of reputation, right? People will look at you from a positive yardstick, right? It's going to start impacting your cash flows. So cash flows will be a bit, I'll not say now it's not going to be erratic. It's going to be like a composite. You will make money. That's not an issue. Possibility of a job change, very high possibility, right? In terms of your health, it's going to be impacting because sitting in 10th house is going to be looking at your second and sixth house, right? And by nature, obviously, for Taurus, and Jupiter is the ruler of your one is the your one is going to be the ruler of your 11th house, and second is going to be the ruling your 8th house, right? So possibilities of some sudden gains from people who are associated with mining industry, they can be surely be surprised by some positive developments if the dashas and dashas are good. Okay. So now let's come to the next one, which is Gemini. So Gemini, Jupiter will be placed in their ninth house, right? Sorry, for Gemini, Jupiter will be placed in your 11, 3, 2, 1, 12, 11. Yeah, Jupiter will be placed in your ninth house, right? Ninth house is again house of higher learnings, right? And once Jupiter is in the place of higher learning, there's high possibility you may go for high level studies. Another thing which is going to come up is overseas travel as well, right? Long term travels. That is the two positive signs. On the negative side, Jupiter will put a lot of effort as well. Lagna will be strong, right? Because Jupiter from ninth house will be looking at the Lagna as well, right? But I'll not say that this is going to be very, very positive kind of stuff professionally, right? On a personal level, very high level of possibility you get attracted towards somebody. Right, that's a very very strong possibility. Might open opportunities for marriage as well. Right. So that is going to be for the Gemini. If we come next one, which is for Cancer, right? For Cancer, Jupiter will be placed in the eighth house, right? Very tricky position. Reason being because for Cancer ascendant, normally Jupiter is good. Okay, normally Jupiter is good because, but in this particular case, Jupiter will be placed in eighth house. So there are going to be one or two positives, right? One positive surely is in terms of research. People associated with research is going to be a very very fruitful time, right? And people who are into litigations, right? Litigation people also going to be beneficial. You need to be concerned a bit about your voice because sitting in eighth house, Jupiter is looking at your second house. So normally Jupiter has a bit of ego attached to him, right? Reason being because teachers, you will normally see that they have a bit of bloated ego, right? Normally, I'm not saying I'm not, because obviously they have a bit of knowledge. I'm not denying that, but normally they'll have a bit of additional ego attached with them, right? So that is something which you need to be careful about, right? Now let's come to the next one, which is Leo, right? Leo, personally, I'll say very, very good period because in Leo, Jupiter comes into your seventh house, right? And for Jupiter, for Leo, Jupiter as such is a good planet, right? Because it is beneficial to the lagna, right? Now, Jupiter, whenever it's placed in the seventh house, right, it does impact the personal life to an extent, right? If it is in the lagna chart, but if it is in a transit, it does give you opportunities. So, good time to get married. That is the first positive point. Second, high possibility of some sort of businesses getting developed. Okay, some sort of people who are having a relationship technically and they wanted to get this converted into a marriage. This is the right time. Okay, next 1 year is the right time where a lot of love marriages will probably happen, or people who are stuck, who are into relationships, they want to get married. A great time for them, right? Now, secondly, Jupiter is going to be the impact will be on the eighth house because Jupiter Pisces Rashi, and in addition, fifth house as well, right? So there's a possibility, some people who have strong horoscopes, right? There's a possibility of some bit of sudden gains as well. Okay. These sudden gains can be because they are going to, the nature is going to be speculative gains per se. Okay. Speculative gains in the sense, short-term transactions, you can make money through maybe in some ancestor property, right? Something gets sorted out. Some legal cases may get sorted out, right? There might be a possibility people who are into say mining or something, right? They may make a discovery. Mind that's a possibility, right? And secondly, Jupiter sitting in seventh house is looking at your lagna as well, right? So your determination, focus, control is going to be of good level, right? You will be much more focused, determined kind of person, right? Now let's come to the next one, which is Virgo, right? For Virgo, Jupiter will be sitting in your sixth house, right? Now Jupiter, the nature per se for Virgo, Jupiter is not a very, I'll say it's not a very good planet per se, right? But normally, what's in this particular Dasha, because Jupiter is going to be comfortable, so obviously it will impact your sixth house, which is your one job, second diseases, right? But it's going to be positive on that side, right? So there might be a resolution where probably people were ill and they were not able to identify the problem, right? This is the time when the problem will be identified and it's going to be sorted out, right? People who are stuck, who are not having jobs, right? This is the time when people can have a bit of job as well. Possibility of much better betterment in terms of the career, right? In terms of people who are appearing for your entrance exams and kind of stuff, right? This is the time when they, in all probability, will be a much better time, right? Because they should be successful, my understanding, on the career. Now let's come to the next one, which is Libra, right? For Libra, Jupiter will be placed in your fifth house, right? Libra per se is the sign of relationships. Personally, very balanced kind of sign. For them, if Jupiter is placed in fifth house, obviously issues which are with respect to the married life to an extent will be sorted out. Okay, that is the first thing. Second thing for Jupiter is short-term travels, right? That is given. In terms of gains, it's going to be positive. The people who are into stock market and with Libra ascendant, right, is going to be very positive for them. High possibility they will make good money, right, whenever Jupiter is traveling into this sign, right. Now, which is the negative side, which they need to be careful about, right? Obviously, health is one thing. It's not going to be that impacted. However, if they are running the dashas or the dasha and Jupiter is not well placed in the horoscope, health can get impacted because Jupiter is the in the transit. Jupiter is going to be ruling your sixth house. Okay, so that is the particular for Libra, right? Now let's come to the next side, which is Scorpio. For Scorpio, this transit is primarily going to be a transit which is for building up capital assets. That is the first thing, right? The people who are into public service, right, or say politicians or bureaucrats, this is the time period when their reputation is normally going to be substantially enhanced because fourth house again is the house of a public reputation. Wherever we are standing in front of the public, reputation gets enhanced. Okay? So Jupiter for Scorpio, I'll say is very, very strong, very good because for anyway for Scorpio, Jupiter is normally good as well, right? Possibility of marriages, settlement with the in-laws, that is another thing. Wider friend circle, so there's very high possibility your friend circle will supplement or help you in whatever way possible, right? Work obviously is going to get improved, right? Foreign travel expected, right? Now let's come to the next sign, which is Sagittarius, right? For Sagittarius people, Jupiter in the second house was not very good when it was in Capricorn sign because they should have issues with respect to money. Issues with respect to money, I'm saying the small plus and minuses will keep happening, but in terms of abundance, there might be certain projects which were stuck for a long time, right? Now in the transit, Jupiter will come into the third sign, which is the sign of communication and efforts, okay, and short-term travels. Sagittarius, one of the signs which is going to be very, very strongly impacted. Reason because Jupiter is the sign of lagna as well, right? So whenever Jupiter position normally impact them substantially because whenever Jupiter is in say retrograde or even in debilitated position because this rules the two important houses. One is the house of self, which is the lagna, and second is the house which is the fourth house, which is the house for normally we'll say the happiness, right? Thirdly, it is the important house, which is your own self house, right? So the happiness which you get from the house, right? That normally when Jupiter is not in a good position in the sense in terms of transit, it does get impacted. So all these things are going to get turned towards the positive side. People will have a lot of interest even in terms of understanding the broader knowledge base, right? So they're going to broaden their knowledge base. It's going to be good for business. It's going to be good for self capital assets is going to be very good for your 11th house as well because whenever Jupiter looks at a particular house, it gives much better result as compared to the situation when it is sitting in that house. Okay, normally that is the basic principle. So I'll say one of the best ones is for Sagittarius, right, and for Aries as well, and particularly for certain specific pockets, right. I'll say something like for Scorpio it is assets, right. But for Sagittarius, it's going to impact maximum four, five houses and very, very strong. Okay. Now the next sign is which is Capricorn, right? Capricorn is the sign of Sun, and Jupiter is going to be placed in the second house. So there'll be a bit of arrogance in your voice, right? Money will not be a major issue. Money is something which is going to flow. People associated with the research, people associated with say mining or underground activities. Underground in the sense I'm saying below the earth activities, not underground, right? So these are the things which are going to be extremely positive. They're going to, the people, so something like we say infrastructure projects are stuck, right? Why they are stuck? Because we have issues with respect to land acquisitions or etc. So this is going to get into the positive side. Okay. In addition, Jupiter will be looking at your sixth house. There might be some expansion, some diseases which you already have, right? It will just flare up, but flare up for the good because now they'll flare up and you will actually find a permanent solution for that. Okay. The next one is Aquarius. Aquarius is going to be again very, very positive because Aquarius, Jupiter will be one for Aquarius. Jupiter is the Karka for two very important houses. One is the house number 11 and second is the house number 2, right? Which both are concerned with money, inflow and accumulation of that. So for Aquarius, This transit, very positive, right? And they're going to be impacting their, again, most important houses, which is house number 5th, 7th, 9th. In addition, they're going to be owning the houses, which is your house number 11, 2, again, money, right? Because 7th is business, partnership, family, 5th house is your speculative gains, 11th is inflow of money, second is accumulation of money, and 9th is knowledge enhancement. Okay. All important houses, lagna, obviously, your determination, your focus is going to be substantially up. Because last year, last 1 year had not been too good for you guys. Okay. Now let's come to the next one, which is Pisces, right? For Pisces, Jupiter is going to be placed in the 11th house. But for Pisces, being the ascendant lord, people who were stuck in India, wanted to go abroad, right? Things will get sorted out. People who wanted to get into competitions or wanted to get into job, right? Again, Jupiter is going to help you there, right? People who wanted to build up some assets, right? Assets, not to stay in those assets, right? It is assets which is primarily investment kind of assets, or assets which is reckoning, where you are enjoying the asset. So which is say like cars and kind of stuff, right? Where you spend, but that is recurring. It's not an asset built up. It is a spend because you will use that property, right? So it's like a depreciable asset. I'll say depreciable assets is something which Jupiter in 12th house recommends. Might be expansion in terms of, yeah, it's going to be a very good period for them in terms of the, normally a lot of people, extramarital affairs is something which is a possibility, right? And bed places is another thing which is 12th house Jupiter kind of signifies. So from that perspective, it is good as well, right? In addition, Jupiter for this is going to be running your 10th house as well, right? So status improvement is another thing, right? Very, very high possibility you may get into a job into MNC. That's very, very important because the Lord of ninth house is sitting in the 11th house, right? So it can activate that part, right? Where people shift job from an Indian corporate to a multinational corporate. That's a very strong possibility. So overall, I will say Jupiter, this transit is normally positive for practically everybody, right? Very positive for four lagnas. I'll say one is Aries, Sagittarius, Pisces, in addition Scorpio. Very positive for them. Even Leo is for very, I'll say very, very positive for these four. Positive for Leo, right? Positive for Libra, positive even for Gemini, right? And even for Cancer, right? So few people it is good. For few people it is extremely good, right? And the people who have positive Jupiter in their horoscope and they are running the dasha or antardashas of Jupiter, irrespective of their lagna, right? Jupiter will give them substantial amount of, right? So overall, my intention was just because everybody was in a stressed period in last 1 year, right? So touch wood, things have changed. So 7th, 8th April onwards, a lot of things will start falling in place. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time and thanks for listening to the video. Thanks.